If you're Somali living in Minnesota today, you can do everything right. Go to work, pay your bills, raise your children, and still wake up to a president of the United States calling you garbage, calling your community garbage.
We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country.
And federal agents sweeping through your community as if you are a problem that needs to be removed.
I was simply on my lunch break. I literally went downstairs from my building. I wasn't even outside for mere seconds before I seen a masked person running at me full speed. He tackled me, pushed me inside the restaurant, like as you can see in the video. I told him I'm a US citizen, what is going on? He didn't seem to care.
Are all Somalis in Minnesota criminals?
I am a Somali American school principal.
I'm a Somali American doctor.
I'm a Somali American risk manager.
I am a Somali American ICU nurse.
I am a Somali American police commander.
I'm a Somali American athlete raised in Minnesota, chasing the Olympic dream.
Dr. G. Real stories, real people, unpacking the struggles, reclaiming the narratives with Dr. G.
You can watch the news talk more about frauds, gangs, and crackdowns than about teachers, businessmen, nurses, truck drivers, doctors, pilots, athletes, officers, military men and women who make up the vast majority of Somali Minnesotans. And so today I want to ask directly, and I also want to answer directly, are all Somalis in Minnesota criminals? Or rather, are all Somalis criminals? What is really happening about this ICE operation in Minnesota? And what should the Somali community, the general public, and most especially the African immigrant and African Americans understand about this moment? This is an educational and informational conversation. I'm drawing on reporting. I'm drawing on research. I'm drawing on real life stories that you can check out on your own. You can check them out on social media. You can check them out online. But before we talk about race and fraud and crackdowns and people being called garbage, how did the Somali people find themselves in Minnesota in the first place? Well, you must know that Minnesota did not just become a Somali hub by accident. Minnesota is now home to over 80,000 ethnic Somalis, representing the largest Somali community outside Africa. Many Somalis came into Minnesota because Somalia collapsed into violence. After independence in the 1960s, dictatorship, war with Ethiopia, and a brutal civil conflict tore that country apart. All these happening in the 1980s and 1990s, displacing so many Somalis as refugees and asylees in different countries, different parts of the world. And the United States began issuing refugee visas to Somalis in the early 1990s. Agencies like the Lutheran Services and the Catholic Charities, which had already resettled Southeast Asian refugees, helped Somalis to resettle in Minnesota and start to build a new life in the state. So the question is, why Minnesota? Why not somewhere else? Why not a different state? And the story is almost simple. In 1992, a few Somali men in South Dakota heard about jobs in a poultry plant in Marshall, Minnesota. They came here, they were hired, and then they told others that, hey, there is a poultry plant here in Minnesota that offers job to people who look like you and I. And so scouts, who Somalis would refer to as Sahans, came here to check it out for themselves. And when they came, they found jobs. They found good pay, and they found a welcoming community here in Minnesota. And with that, words began spreading through family communication networks, informing other family members that, hey, Minnesota is actually a place where you can work, get a good paycheck, and you can support people back home in Somalia. And by the late 1990s, guess what? Minnesota was home to the largest Somali community outside Africa. Because of cultural and language barriers, Somali doctors, Somali businessmen, Somali experts started making their ways into Minnesota, where they could be able to offer their services to their people in a culturally grounded manner. And so the Somali neighborhoods began revitalizing parts of South Minneapolis, which was already getting dilapidated. And from there, the Somali community moved into every part of public life. You started having people like Hussein Samata on the school board, Abdi Wasame on the city council, Ilan Omar in Congress, Omar Fateh and Zainab Mohammed in the Minnesota Senate, and people like Salma Hussein becoming principals in elementary schools. And so Somalis found themselves in every segment of the society. Now that's the community we're talking about. That is the community of Somalis in Minnesota. And now let us shift gears a little bit. Let's deal with money, because when you watch the news today, when you watch social media today, a lot of the rhetoric is centered around money. So let's look into the money. Let's look into the economic contribution of Somalis in Minnesota. You must have heard of the economist Dr. Bruce Corrie. Now, he did a review of the economic contribution of Somalis in the state of Minnesota, and guess what he found? The Somali Minnesotans generate over $500 million of household income every single year. They pay about $67 million in state and local taxes, and they contribute roughly $8 billion to the Minnesota economy. And they do this through their work, their spending, and their businesses in the state of Minnesota. This is what the news outlet fail to recognize. This is what a lot of people in the MAGA community fail to understand about the Somali community here in Minnesota. Somalis drive trucks and they keep the supply chain moving, a lot of which are owned businesses. They staff factories, they staff warehouses, they staff healthcare facilities, they run restaurants and even shopping malls. They are nurses, home health aides, teachers, soldiers, police officers, professors, doctors, pilots, athletes, and they open small businesses that turn abandoned storefronts into busy markets and community hubs. This is not romantic language. This is documented economic fact about the Somali community in Minnesota. But let's not sugarcoat it. At the same time, the same Somali community face a lot of structural challenges in the state of Minnesota. Using a 10-year census data by the Center for Immigration Studies, which documents current immigration levels, they found that most of the Somalis who live in the state of Minnesota, about 39% of them do not have a high school diploma or a degree. And this is compared to about 5% of adults who are born in this country. About 58% of them speak very little or no English at all. And the poverty rates in Somali household rate very high, higher than the state average in most cases. You see, you have a refugee community that came straight from war. Little English, little money in their hands, little education. They generate hundreds of millions of dollars of state income. They pay taxes, and yet a high percentage still languishes in poverty and are still dependent on state safety nets for survival. We do not need to hide those numbers because they form part of the full picture, and they make their economic contribution more remarkable, not less. Now let's enter politics. When Donald Trump needed the votes of Somalis, this is what he had to say about the Somali community.
Minnesota is home to a large Somali population, which has historically voted Democrat, but we're hearing more and more. There are many reports about them supporting your candidacy this time around. But why should they?
Because they want safety, they want security. In many ways, they have the worst crime numbers in terms of crimes against, and they want to be safe. They want security just like everybody else. And I've heard that. I've heard I'm doing very well in that community.
And when he was done counting their bodies for his political power, this is what he had to say.
The Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country. And all they do is complain, complain, complain. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. They complain and do nothing but bitch. We don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much.
Trump described the Somali community as garbage and says they contribute nothing to the economy. You know, I want us to correct the narratives. And he called that they be all kicked out of the United States and talked about his crackdown on Minnesota's Somali community, a specific target. And he tied this all to fraud cases and alleged money laundering involving Somalis in Minnesota. And I want to remind you that this is not the first time Donald Trump uses such foul language about a particular group of people. We remember his earlier comments about African countries. And how profane is it that the President of the United States will be openly racial about a demographic that happens to come from Africa specifically, and hear what he has to say in terms of who is welcome to the United States.
We had a meeting, and I said, why is it we only take people from shithole countries, right? Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let us have a few. From Denmark, do you mind sending us a few people? Send us some nice people, do you mind? But we always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
He talked of other European countries who already have their places in the United States. No doubt about it. We never hear people kicking out Europeans. We never see ICE agents kicking out Italians. We never see ICE agents kicking out Swedish people, people from Norway. Who do we see the ICE agents kicking out? Rough handling in our streets, people from very targeted populations. When the civil rights movement took place, we thought that we would not see a United States president revisit the past in such brutal manner. But this is what Donald J. Trump is reminding us, that though the chains were removed from the enslaved people's hands and feet, the mentality remained. And people like Donald J. Trump and his supporters are the ones who today clap and cheer when he makes such comments in a cabinet meeting. You can see them. They're clapping, they're cheering. Because people like those who still want the systems that existed before 1865, during the 1900s, there are Americans who still do not value Africans as human beings. There are Americans who still do not value people from specific countries as having the right to exist in the United States. And if you think this is an attack on the Somali people, you're making a big mistake. This is an attack on a people. Today, it's about the Somalis, and we will cheer. Some Africans will say, yes, you're right. Say it loud and clear. Tomorrow, it will be the next African community. And the next day, it will be the next day, it will be the next, until we come to an understanding that when you attack one, you attack all. Now, when a president calls a group of human beings garbage, this is not just being rude.
It's very dehumanizing and is very unpresidential coming from the commander-in-chief of the United States to dehumanize and to dehumanize a whole entire community by calling them garbage. And this is not acceptable by any means.
He's given the country and his followers permission to see that group of people as disposable. That's what you do with garbage. Check it out in the dictionary, the definition of garbage. He's seeing that group of people as disposable. And he's given permission to his followers and everybody who thinks like Donald Trump to understand that people like that, people who look like that, people from that group do not need any attention. People from that group do not deserve any kind of care. And you want to ask how crime, discrimination, segregation are planted? This is exactly how the seeds of hate crimes, discrimination, segregation are planted in the hearts of people. This is how you fester it to grow in communities. When a president uses his position and power to propagate segregation, to dehumanize a group of people, what he is literally doing is injecting crime, hate in a community that is thriving, and disregarding the contributions of people who are already here, contributing hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, into an economy that is thriving. And what this brings forth is discriminatory policies. Policies that favor the one and disfavors the other just because of how they look or what community they come from. And I want to send a very strong message to the President of the United States and his cabinet. Our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, the Somali community in Minnesota are a gift to this community, not garbage. Community groups have teamed up. They're handing out Know Your Rights cards. They're handing out training on knowing your rights in languages that are accessible to all in the community, including the Somali language in Minnesota. And people are choosing to stay home from work or schools because they are afraid. It doesn't really matter if you have a US passport. It doesn't really matter if you're a US citizen. You can be clamped down, and before you know it, you could be on a plane for deportation. The ICE agents don't even care about your citizenship status. All they want to do is accomplish their father's task. Brutality on men, women, and children in schools, places of work, church, places of worship. They vandalize everybody. You are a crime before you prove not guilty. And when you combine that with the president's garbage claim, you do not just have people enforcing the laws of the United States. You have what we call a campaign that creates fear and chaos in the community, and particularly in Somali neighborhoods in Minnesota, and the wrongful detention of citizens who simply look like Somalis. And yes, we also need to address the fraud story without any denial, but without exaggeration. Minnesota has been at the center of the Feeding Our Future scandal, and the DOJ has described that as the largest pandemic fraud in the United States. The nonprofit and its partners stole allegedly hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion, in federal child nutrition funds that were meant to feed children during COVID school closures. And as at 2025, 78 people have been charged. More than 50 of them have pleaded guilty, and several others have been convicted at trial. And yes, some of the defendants in that allegation, some of the defendants in that case are Somali Americans. Although the leader and founder of that organization is a white woman, Amy Buck. Now let's be clear here. Anyone who steals public money, public funds meant for children or for any other public goods must not go without facing accountability, irrespective of your background, irrespective of how you look or where you come from. Because this is not a small matter. It is a crime against the whole community. It is a crime against taxpayers' money. There are tens of thousands of Somalis in Minnesota. 80,000 Somalis approximately living in Minnesota. And of that, a small number has been charged in fraud schemes. And yet, what does the media and political speeches represent? They represent an entire community. They speak as though Somali fraudsters represent the entire community of Somalis in Minnesota. Now that is what we call being unjust. We call that scapegoating. And anybody with their right mind will understand why ICE operations in Minnesota against Somalis is not about the fraud. It's not about the $1 billion. It's not about those who have already been apprehended and are facing trial or are facing their own punishment. This is not the reason for ICE operations in Minnesota. This is a target to a community that is thriving, and people who think that yes, you're welcome to the United States, but not to thrive as much as you're doing. This is their attempt to make that statement clear. You do not take the worst behavior of a few Irishmen or a few Danishmen or a few Italians and call out the entire Irish, Danish, Italian people as criminals. We've had situations in this country where people from Italy, people from Denmark, people from different countries, the same one that the president says, we welcome you in our country. People with names. We can identify those names when we hear them, when we see them, and we can tell you what countries they come from. But nobody raises a finger to say everybody from that country must be kicked out. Think about the guy who murdered the CEO for United Healthcare. We all know where that name comes from, but nobody raised a finger to say everybody from that country must be kicked out of the United States. We all know his name. So this is why the operations of ICE in Minnesota is not about fraud. It's not about money. It is about a specific people. It's an attack. So don't be naive. Don't be delusional in thinking, oh, it's the Somalis. No, it's about people who look like you and I. And they come for one. They test the waters. They'll come for the other. It's just a matter of time. So let us answer the question directly. Are all Somalis criminals? And again, I'll refer you to the Center of Immigration Studies finding, which indicates that the rate of institutionalization, including imprisonment among young Somalis in Minnesota, you have about 15 per 1,000 of Somali young men being imprisoned. This means 1.5% of Somali young men are institutionalized at any given time. And guess what? 98.5% of Somali young men are not institutionalized. And so when you take the 1.5% of Somali young men who are in prison and make it the standard for criminalizing 98.5% of Somali young men, what message are you passing across? How is that administrative scrutiny? How is that law enforcement in the United States of America? There's no doubt some Somalis, like some people in any community or any group, do commit crimes and must be held accountable for that. Must be held accountable for the crimes they commit. And the Somali community is not behind those who commit crimes. The Somali community is not out in the streets supporting those who commit crime. They actually condemn people who commit crimes in their communities. They do condemn them because these are the individuals who put their names on the bad side of the media. Many Somali people do not commit crimes. They are hard-working American citizens who pay their taxes, who take their children to school, and just try to make a living in Minnesota. And so there's no honest way that you can stretch the words of the president that Somalis are criminals without lying. And guess what other data has to say about the Somali community? It says the labor force from the Somali community is higher, even higher than the general population of Minnesota. And the community is heavily represented in essential jobs. These are all facts. You can check it out. From trucking to healthcare to manufacturing, I have seen that firsthand. So yes, the Somali community is doing well, not just for themselves, but for this state. And so when someone comes up and says Somalis are criminals, Somalis are garbage, what they are really doing is using individual crime and real poverty to justify a stereotype that does not reflect the overall reality. And here is a wake-up call for my fellow African immigrant community here in Minnesota. This is a very important moment. When many of us arrive in the United States, we are most often treated as the good immigrant. People compliment our accent. People compliment our humility. Some even say you are not like those black Americans. Some even prefer to work with you than to work with our brothers, African Americans. Sometimes we get smiles, sometimes we get polite curiosity, and sometimes we get an easier entry into certain spaces if you're an African immigrant in this country. Easy police stops, understandable conversations with the police officer, and all that can feel good. And it can feel like we are above the struggle of African Americans. It can feel like we are better than African Americans. And some of us even take that to heart and start making all kinds of comments, even on social media, saying that we cannot come here and submerge ourselves into the black struggles, a thing we never experienced. You're about to find out that the brothers and sisters who have been here long enough before we ever came here have been under these same kind of struggle for 400 plus years. We're just about to find out that the alienation from our black brothers and sisters is not doing us any good. The talking down to our black brothers and sisters in the United States does not do us any good. They have been under this same tumult for 400 plus years. During the civil rights movement, it was worse than what you see happening to the Somali community in Minnesota. Black people everywhere suffered worse segregation, worse targeting than what you're seeing now. Not to talk of before the civil rights movement. So if you think that what is happening now is something new to America, I'll tell you, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what our brothers and sisters have already endured for 400 plus years. And they tell us this. But we do not listen. We turn our faces the other way and we condemn them because the media and very censored books in the library have given us the false information about our brothers and sisters, black Americans in this country. So when we come, we shut them off, we talk them down, we underlook them, we call them names, we don't want to associate with them, and we think we are better than them. But this should be a wake-up call to you. When you come here and they call you all those good names, they smile at you, they tell you about your accent, they claim to trust you better than them, ask yourself a question. Am I really better? Or are you just really trying to make me alienate myself from people who look like me? Because that has been the intention of the colonizers. That has been the intention of the enslavers, to divide us. You see those lines that they made on our boundaries to separate one country from the other in Africa? Those were not lines meant to define people. Those were lines meant to separate us from each other. That is why families were cut, because they knew when Africans come together, and I mean when black people come together, something powerful can always happen. We are arriving into a country that has treated our brothers and sisters, black Americans, as disposable for centuries. We are entering into a house that was built on anti-blackness, rooted in the very policies that started this country. So yeah, they make you look like, no, you're not the problem. The problem is them, black Americans. So this is a wake-up call, because you would not be treated differently from what they have been going through for the past 400 plus years. It's just a matter of time. You are the youngest babies. I mean, the youngest babies in the fight, and you're about to experience that firsthand. Perhaps not as brutal as they did, but let this be a wake-up call. And guess what? The biggest winners in a fight like this are people like Trump and his supporters, people who share his worldview, people who think that black people are not good enough, people who call us garbage in cabinet meetings and clap and cheer. It's not about the Somalis, it's about blackness. So this is not a fight against Somalis. It's just a fight that is starting with an easy target. It's just a fight that continues to you, the recent immigrants, starting with an easy target, the Somalis, because they came here. They are developing themselves. They are occupying positions. They are making headlines, not just in the factories, not just in the workforce, but in the legislature. And so they are heavily identified. And now they want to use them. We did not think that you will rise to this level. Your level is supposed to be below. You have risen to a level we never imagined. So how do we pull you down? We have to call you garbage. That is exactly the same thing that the colonizers and the enslavers did to us Africans. But guess what? This is a wake-up call. Today, they're talking about the Somalis as garbage. Tomorrow, it will be Nigerians. It will be Kenyans. It will be Cameroonians. It will be all of you. It will be all of us. And so when you sit quiet and think, oh, that doesn't concern me, oh, I don't look like a Somali, it's not my problem, that concerns you. And that should concern you. People like Donald Trump and his clappers, his cheerers, they benefit when African immigrants come in here and they divide themselves from our brothers and sisters, the black American community. When we see each other as so different, people like Donald Trump are happy because they benefit from that. They benefit when they make us believe that proximity to whiteness is what is going to protect us. Today, I've heard a lot of messages from my brothers and sisters in the Black American community. They've asked me, now the Somalis are crying and saying, oh, the black community is not supporting them in this struggle with Donald Trump and all that. But when they come to the United States, they first say they are not Africans. They say they are not blacks. I have those messages. I have those phone calls. I have those discussions with Black American brothers and sisters. And this is true. This is true. But this is not true for all Somalis. I must say that. This is not true for all Somalis. There are some individuals from Somalia who have made that claim that they are not Africans, who have made that claim that they are not blacks. And all this is because they think closeness to whiteness is protection. Now you're exposed and you're finding out that, guess what? That closeness to whiteness was never meant to protect us. So I hope this is a wake-up call to you, a Somali, who can ever stand somewhere and tell people that you are not African, you are not black. And I must say this very clearly again. There are many Somali people that I have worked with. There are many Somali people that I am friends to. There are many Somali people that I know. And they proudly identify as black people. They proudly identify as Africans. So for those few who make those kind of comments, it affects an entire community. And so we must stop all this nonsense. We must stop all this division. We must stop all this divisive talk. Whether it's for comedy, whether it's for a show, whether it's for clicks or views or likes, we must stop it. Because it doesn't benefit us. It benefits people like Donald Trump and his cabinet clapping. And so whatever you see happening to the Somali community today in Minnesota should send out a warning to all African groups who have moved into this country. Do not despise your brothers and sisters, the Black Americans. Do not come here and think that closeness to whiteness means protection. Because when they're done with you, you will be garbage. And if you don't know how to arm yourself when that time comes, you will be thrown out and nobody will come to save you. Nobody will be there to help you out. Somalis moved into the United States. They have worked as police officers. They have worked as soldiers defending this country. They work as teachers. They work as medical doctors. They work as nurses, all forms of healthcare workers. They pay their taxes. They raise billions of dollars to state income. But within a matter of weeks, within a matter of days, the President of the United States can make a public statement calling them garbage. You can have federal agents flood their neighborhoods and sweep them, clamp them on the ground as criminals. That is the reality. That is a wake-up call. It takes days. It's not up to a week. It takes days. And all of that smile that you get when you just come here as an African immigrant, all of that niceness that they tell you you're better than Black Americans, it can be watered down in just a day. So be mindful when you move into the United States. When he's naming the countries where he wants people to immigrate from, he talked about Norway, he talked about Sweden, he talked about different countries other than African countries. Open segregation, and with a big smile and cheers and claps and banners. Nobody sees anything wrong with that. I do, and you should. That very moment should tell you that the garbage that they call Somalis today is the same garbage that you're called. African immigrants, you must see your brothers and sisters as family. You must see African Americans as family. You must, and I must preach this message for as long as I live. African Americans, you must begin to see your brothers from Africa as family. And the same thing I will tell you, African immigrants. Stop the nonsense, the name calling. Oh, I'm not African. Oh, I'm this. I'm not African American. I'm not. No. I even heard somebody saying the other day, you think I'm a nigger? And an African saying that to their brother. You think I'm a nigger? What is going on with us? How stupid have we become? How blunt-minded have we become? I'll call on both sides to start seeing each other as family. We must begin to understand that an attack on one black community is an attack on all black communities. And so we don't sit back and laugh and fold our arms and say, oh, I'm not a Somali, so that doesn't really concern me. No. You attack one, you attack all. But that is only possible if we begin to see each other and speak as a family. If we begin to see each other as brothers and sisters, if we begin to speak to each other as family and not all these segregatory internal segregations that we have among us. I'm not black, I'm not African, I'm not African American, I'm not nigger, I'm not this, I'm not that. And to everyone in Minnesota who is not Somali, this is what I ask of you. Educate yourselves beyond the headlines. I want you to look at works like that of Dr. Bruce. Read the Sahan Journal and begin to understand that a few Somalis who committed a crime do not represent the entire Somali community. Begin to understand that. Educate yourself. Look into the details of the fraud cases and see who has been charged, see who has been convicted for crimes they committed. The crime of an individual does not all of a sudden become a collective crime, and so does the accountability of individual criminals does not become the accountability of a collective group of people. You must refuse lazy generalization. And when you hear someone says Somalis are criminals, Somalis are fraudsters, Somalis are garbage, you do your best to ask them what data they are quoting from. Ask them whether they will accept that kind of generalization for their own group. If a few Irish bad people can be used to generalize all Irish people as bad, if a few Danish bad people will be generalized to use as though all Danish people are bad, if a few criminals from Italy can be generalized to say all Italians are bad, if a few criminals from France, Britain, Germany will be used rightly to say all Germans, French, British are bad and so must be kicked out of the United States, we must resist lazy generalization. I want to end with some very practical points. You have rights regardless of your status. You do have rights. You do have the right to remain silent. When you are faced with this kind of malicious and horrific attack by federal agents, you do have the right to ask if you are free to go. And I want to commend Mo Bashir for trying to exercise some of those rights. Sometimes it may look like it doesn't really matter, but please use them and let us judge later that it did not matter. But those are rights that you have. The right to see a proper warrant signed by a judge before anybody enters into your home, your business area, or your business space. You do have the right to record public interaction with law enforcement agents. The story of Somali Minnesotans is not a story of garbage. It is a story of a people who survived civil war, a people who survived famine, a people who arrived here almost with nothing, and they have built new lives in a cold northern state that they can call home. It is a story of markets, a story of mosques, a story of classrooms, a story of clinics, a story of ballots, and a story of businesses. Yes, there has been serious fraud by some individuals who must be held accountable. Yes, there are real questions about language access, education, healthcare, and integration that deserves honest conversations. But none of that justifies describing any individual or a whole community as criminal, useless, garbage, or disposable. To my Somali viewers, you are not here by accident. You are part of the fabric of this state, Minnesota.
Dr. G. Real stories, real people. Unpacking the struggles, reclaiming the narratives with Dr. G.